Well, welcome back. And as promised, we are joined now by Gregg Roman. He's the executive director of the Middle East Forum, where part of that group's focus is on containing Iran. So, Gregg, thank you for joining us. Did we just lose Gregg again? Okay, we have Gregg. Sorry about that. So, Gregg, we saw over the weekend that the U.S. and Tehran officials met talking about the future of that country's nuclear program. There was some reporting out of the New York Times that Iranian officials essentially said that these negotiations would not require dismantling the country's nuclear infrastructure. Give us your overall reaction to that potential news and just the fact that these two countries are continuing to meet right now.
So we have to compare Iran's program from 10 years ago when the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed between the Obama administration and the Iranian government and where Iran stands today. They have dozens of more nuclear sites. They have much more advanced centrifuges. They have approximately 606 pounds of enriched uranium, up to a level of about 60%, where the threshold for a nuclear weapon is 90%. Take that into time consideration, it's only a few weeks away from a bomb. And I think that the Iranians believing that they'll be allowed to have a nuclear infrastructure is a wish that will not be fulfilled under this administration. President Trump was very clear in his effort to try to completely dismantle not just the Iranian nuclear weapons program, but all of their nuclear infrastructure. And those kinds of talking points only allow for the negotiations to go to a point where they will not be completed if Iran does not fulfill the president's wishes.
It seems to be a divide amongst those who are around Trump between negotiate versus you can't trust Iran to begin with, so there's no point in talking to them. Do you come down on the side that negotiation is actually beneficial to the U.S.?
No, I'm in support of these negotiations insofar as they give the Iranians an opportunity to solve this problem without having the United States or its allies engage in kinetic action against Iran's nuclear program. But I do not believe the Iranians will fulfill their end of the bargain. I don't think that they're doing this in terms of being willing to go so far as to completely dismantle their program. I just think that they're trying to bide their time and they're trying to make the president look like a fool. But insofar as it relates to the president's position, he has to try negotiations before he takes other options. I think that's the responsible path, but I think the Iranians will fail in terms of their participation and their willingness to completely dismantle their program.
And, Steve Witkoff, who's been leading most of these efforts on behalf of the Trump administration, did go out and say that negotiations could potentially allow Iran to enrich uranium up to, I think it was 3.6%, similar to what we saw under that deal that Tehran had with President Obama. He walked that back a bit, saying that there's no enrichment. But what are the implications in terms of how significant even a seemingly small amount like 3.6% of enrichment could have?
If you can scale yourself to have the full nuclear cycle capability of being able to procure the uranium, or if they're trying to go for a plutonium program, then to be able to get to the centrifuges where they can spin it up to 3.67%, then you can easily go back and get to 60%, 90%. The only way to guarantee that Iran no longer has the capability to enrich uranium from a point of 0% all the way up to that of a nuclear weapons threshold is to make sure that they do not have the infrastructure to do so. And like you said, Envoy Witkoff went back on that initial announcement that he had made. And I think that that was a clarification coming from the Trump administration's National Security Council. The position of the United States government is they will not stand to allow Iran to have any nuclear infrastructure, whether it be 3% or 90%. It has to go.
And we also know that leaders from Iran have been talking to officials from Russia as well outside of these negotiations. What hurdles could Russia potentially pose to any potential breakthrough between Washington and Tehran?
As much as Putin is trying to wax poetic to Trump, either in negotiations, letters, or in conversations between envoys, it's in Russia's interest right now to try to put a spanner in these negotiations. I think that what they're trying to do is to try to encourage the Iranians to drag this out, to cause problems for the United States, and to not have the area of cooperation. They might be doing it under the guise of Russia, again, being willing to, quote unquote, host Iran's enriched uranium so that it's removed from the country. But the only way to actually get this deal done And if Russia wants to have positive involvement, it's for them to completely help Iran dismantle its nuclear program, including the Russian-built reactor at Bushehr, which is their only active nuclear reactor right now. Otherwise, everything they're trying to do is just trying to sort of gird the United States to not have a successful negotiation.
All right, Gregg Roman, the executive director of the Middle East Forum. Gregg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.